Have you ever trusted a K9 dog's instincts, even more than your own senses? Imagine this. Just seconds before takeoff, a K9 dog suddenly bolts into the cockpit, ignoring every command, sniffing out a hidden terror that no human could detect. What he found could have destroyed everyone on board. Would you have listened to him or risked it all by trusting only your eyes? Before we dive into today's incredible story of loyalty and courage, we'd love for you to be part of our growing community. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And if stories like these move you, feel free to subscribe. No pressure, just presence. Your voice matters here. The terminal buzzed with a muted urgency, the kind you only notice if you're trained to listen between heartbeats. Officer Zephyr Vexen adjusted the strap of his tactical vest, feeling the subtle shift of energy in the air. At his side, Ace, his loyal K9 dog, paced with a tension that vibrated just under the surface. It wasn't the kind of tension you could see. It was something you felt. Something was wrong. The departure screens flickered overhead, oblivious to the silent battle unfolding just beyond their neon glow. Rain slashed against the glass walls of Alderwin International, the first whisper of the incoming storm that would later close the skies above Valoran Bay. Zephyr dropped to a knee, one hand brushing Ace's fur. Steady, grounding. You feel it too, don't you, partner? Ace's dark amber eyes locked onto his, a silent confirmation more powerful than words. The early boarding announcements crackled through the loudspeakers, urging civilians to hurry. But Zephyr stayed still, listening, feeling. 1,000 small details most would miss. A flicker of movement in the cockpit window, a door that seemed to close too softly, the scent of something that didn't belong. Ace stiffened, muscles rippling beneath his sable and tan coat, his entire being focused like an arrow pulled taut. Zephyr knew that posture, knew it better than he trusted his own gut. He gave a single nod, a decision made not by logic, but by a bond forged in fire and fear. "Show me," he whispered. Ace surged forward, dragging Zephyr into the unknown, toward a danger no one else could see yet. But that pulsed like a hidden heartbeat waiting to explode. Ace's paws struck the polished floor with muted urgency, nose skimming along the seams where human eyes would never think to look. The world around them blurred, just noise and silhouettes fading into background static. Zephyr moved in sync, heart pounding, not from fear, but from the raw certainty pulsing between them. 3 years together, hundreds of drills. Ace never lied. They crossed through the narrow service passage leading toward Gate E-17, where the chartered flight waited. A Boeing 737 that should have been just another transport, just another day. But nothing felt normal anymore. Up ahead, Captain Dorian Crowthorne stood at the jet bridge, papers in hand, checking his watch with a tight frown. Pressure hung in the air, thick, metallic. "Officer Vexen, is there a problem?" he asked, voice clipped. Professional. Zephyr barely spared him a glance. Ace suddenly veered hard, nose snapping toward a maintenance access panel near the cockpit door. Not barking, not whining, just fixated. Zephyr's stomach coiled. Without hesitation, he dropped to one knee beside the panel, brushed his fingertips along the metal edge. Slight give, a fraction too loose, his breath caught. They tried to hide it. Before he could pry further, a boarding announcement boomed overhead, jolting the air. Regular passengers were minutes away from filling this aircraft. Zephyr met Captain Crowthorne's sharp gaze. "We need more time," he said, low, unyielding. The captain hesitated, torn between procedure and the quiet alarm sounding in every fiber of Zephyr's body. Ace didn't move, his entire being coiled, locked onto the panel like a compass drawn to true north. Something, or someone, was waiting behind it, and time was slipping away. The storm was no longer a distant threat. It clawed at the horizon, snarling with lightning flashes barely hidden by the terminal's glass facade. Inside the aircraft, tension twisted tighter with every tick of the clock. Captain Dorian Crowthorne's jaw clenched. His hand hovered over the boarding authorization switch, a decision dangling between instinct and protocol. Passengers gathered behind the gate, their voices a low, restless hum. Zephyr Vexen didn't move, didn't blink. Ace's unwavering focus was a living alarm, one only a fool would ignore. But the minutes were bleeding away. "Officer Vexen, we must board now," Crowthorne pressed, urgency fraying his polished exterior. Zephyr's voice cut through the static. "We delay 2 minutes. If I'm wrong, we move. If I'm right, we save every life on this plane." The captain hesitated, torn between consequences, seen and unseen. Ace shifted his stance, barely a whisper of motion, but it carried the weight of certainty. His paws pressed firmer into the floor. His chest rose, rigid with intent. Zephyr's mind flashed back. A hidden explosive in a dusty market alley. A heartbeat missed by every metal detector. But not by Ace. Not then. Not now. He squared his shoulders. "I'm invoking K9 security override," Zephyr said, voice low but final. Shock flickered across Crowthorne's face, but he didn't argue. He stepped aside. Zephyr knelt, fingers moving quickly along the maintenance panel seams. Time. Storm. Passengers. None of it mattered now. Only Ace. Only the truth waiting in the dark beyond this thin layer of metal, and the terrifying possibility that they were already too late. The screwdriver bit into the first screw. A small sound, but in the tight confines of the aircraft, it sounded like a gunshot. Zephyr worked fast, hands steady, movements deliberate. Every second that ticked away was a beat closer to catastrophe or salvation. The last screw clattered to the floor. Ace leaned in, ears pricked, muscles drawn taut like a spring ready to snap. Zephyr braced himself, then pried the panel free. A hollow space yawned open behind it, deeper than maintenance specs allowed. At first it looked empty, just darkness and a tangle of wires. But Ace didn't back down. The dog's nose plunged into the opening, sniffing with sharp, urgent pulls of air. Zephyr's flashlight pierced the gloom, and then he saw it. Not an explosive, not a device, but a glint of fabric, and the subtle movement of breath. A figure, curled impossibly into the void, limbs contorted into angles no human body should hold. A man, alive, hidden like a venomous serpent coiled in wait. Zephyr's pulse slammed into overdrive. Before he could react, the figure twitched, hands slipping towards something unseen along his belt. Ace exploded forward, a growl ripping from his throat, primal and raw. "Hold!" Zephyr barked, voice cutting like a whip. The hidden man froze, caught between action and death. For one suspended heartbeat, no one moved. Only the sound of rain hammering against the fuselage and the low, thunderous growl of a K9 dog who could not be fooled. Zephyr's mind raced. "Who are you? And how long have you been waiting for us?" The man's fingers twitched again. Barely a breath, barely a warning. Zephyr's instinct screamed louder than the storm outside. He didn't wait. Couldn't. "Seize!" The command tore from his throat. Sharp, absolute. Ace launched like a living missile. Muscle, teeth, and fury compressed into one perfect strike. The hidden figure barely had time to flinch before Ace clamped onto his arm with brutal precision, yanking him away from whatever weapon he had been reaching for. A gun, compact, matte black, slipping free from the man's waistband as he struggled, and falling uselessly to the floor. Chaos rippled in a heartbeat. Zephyr dove forward, pinning the man's other arm, knee driving into the hidden space with controlled force. "Weapons secured!" someone shouted, Captain Crowthorne's voice strained and raw. Passengers beyond the gate pressed against the glass, unaware they were seconds from becoming collateral damage. Ace held his position, jaws locked but controlled, not breaking skin, just anchoring, immobilizing. Zephyr slapped cuffs onto the suspect's free wrist, heart hammering, breath ragged, but focus unbroken. The man muttered something in a language Zephyr didn't recognize. Eyes wild, teeth bared. There was no fear in his gaze, only calculation, and something worse. He was never meant to survive this. This wasn't just an assassination. It was meant to be a disaster. Zephyr met Ace's eyes for a fraction of a second, silent understanding passing between them. They had stopped the man, but the true threat might still be out there, waiting. The handcuffs clicked shut. The man sagged, defeated, or so it seemed. Zephyr barely allowed himself a breath before Ace's ears flattened. A new tension vibrating through his frame. Another scent. Another danger. Captain Crowthorne approached, breathless. "We've alerted ground security. Backup's on the way." Zephyr didn't answer. His eyes locked onto Ace, reading the shift, the signal. The German Shepherd turned his head sharply, back toward the cabin, away from the cockpit, away from the suspect, toward the passengers now boarding through the far jet bridge, unaware, vulnerable. Zephyr's blood iced. It had never been about sabotaging the flight. It had always been about blending in, triggering chaos once the plane was full. Maximum casualties. He rose to his feet in one fluid motion, heart hammering. "Lock this down," he barked at Crowthorne, pointing at the subdued suspect. "I'm following my dog." Ace surged forward, weaving through the narrow aisles, nose low, body tense. Zephyr followed without hesitation, knowing somewhere beyond the next row. Another threat moved. Another shadow waited. Passengers glanced up, puzzled, but Zephyr didn't have time to explain. Didn't have time for fear. Ace halted, a deep, low growl rumbling from his chest. Row 3B, a man seated, calm, almost too calm, their eyes locked, and Zephyr saw it. Not panic, not guilt, purpose, cold, surgical intent, and tucked beneath the seat. A glint of something black, another weapon, another plan, another battle, about to begin. Zephyr's hand hovered near his sidearm. Not drawn, not yet. Passengers shifted uneasily, sensing the invisible wire stretched tight between predator and prey. Ace didn't move. He was a statue of focused fury, every fiber tuned to the man in row 3B. Zephyr took a slow step forward. The suspect smiled. Not wide, not friendly, calculated. Without warning, the man's hand snapped downward, a flash of black metal. Zephyr moved on instinct. "Ace, take him!" The German Shepherd lunged with terrifying precision, his body a blur of motion and muscle. Chaos erupted, screams, the shuffle of bodies, the crackle of someone knocking over a tray. But Zephyr saw only the suspect. The weapon, a compact 9mm, clearing leather, aimed at him. No time, no margin. He dropped low, pivoting, as Ace collided with the man's chest, forcing the shot wide. The pistol discharged. A deafening roar inside the cramped cabin, but no impact, no blood. Zephyr tackled from below, driving the man sideways across the seats. Ace's jaws locked onto his wrist, forcing the weapon down. The struggle was brutal, dirty, short. In a matter of seconds, it was over. Ace pinned the suspect against the floor, growling low. Zephyr ripped the gun free, hands slick with adrenaline. Passengers cowered behind seats, wide-eyed and trembling. Silence fell, heavy, broken only by Ace's low, rumbling breath. Zephyr looked down at the subdued man, and for the first time, felt it. This wasn't random. This wasn't desperation. It was something worse. Planned, synchronized, deadly. And the storm outside was nothing compared to what they had just narrowly survived inside. Ace remained planted over the subdued suspect, chest heaving, teeth bared. Zephyr rose slowly, guns secured, eyes sweeping the cabin. Flight attendants clutched the armrests. Passengers huddled behind seats, staring, wide-eyed, not at the suspect, at Ace, at the K9 dog who had just stopped a massacre. A soft murmur rippled down the aisle. Fear, gratitude, awe. Zephyr touched his earpiece. "This is Vexen. Second threat neutralized. Cabin secure, for now." Static crackled. Then Captain Crowthorne's tight voice came through. "Understood. Ground teams inbound. Stand by." Zephyr moved to Ace's side, resting a steady hand against the dog's flank. Reassurance. for both of them. The suspect on the floor hissed through bloodied lips, spitting a name, barely a whisper. Valoran Bay, Phase 2. Zephyr froze. Valoran Bay. The arrival destination, not the origin of the threat, the target. They were never meant to survive the flight because they weren't the real prize. The true chaos would ignite once they landed. Zephyr's stomach twisted. He caught Ace's gaze, the dog's ears twitching, as if feeling the shift in energy. This wasn't over. It wasn't even close. We were just the opening act. Sirens wailed outside the terminal, flashing red and blue through the rain-smeared windows. Backup was coming, but so was something else, something bigger. Zephyr pressed his palm harder against Ace's ribs, grounding himself. We're not done yet, partner. Not even close. Zephyr's mind raced, faster than the pounding of the rain outside. Valoran Bay, Phase 2. He forced his breath to steady, forced the world to narrow, to the only truth that mattered now. The threat wasn't contained. It had only just shifted, evolved. Captain Crowthorne rushed down the aisle, face pale. We've got ground teams securing the aircraft. They're clearing the gates now. Zephyr shook his head. Number. We're wasting time. Phase 2 isn't here. Crowthorne blinked, confused. It's at Valoran. The captain's face changed. Understanding, followed by dread. Zephyr clipped his radio back to his vest, voice sharp. This is Vexen. We need immediate contact with Valoran Bay Security. Possible active threat inbound. Initiate lockdown protocols. Static. Then a grim voice replied, Copy that. Alert going out. Passengers shifted uneasily as officers moved through the aisles, whispering calm reassurances that no one believed. Ace stayed close at Zephyr's side, his body taut, his breathing shallow. The Malinois wasn't just reacting to orders anymore. He felt the tension, the unfinished battle, and Zephyr trusted that more than any report or clearance code. We need to get Collins off this aircraft now, Zephyr said, low enough that only Crowthorne heard. The captain nodded, urgency eclipsing hesitation. Outside, emergency vehicles flooded the tarmac, red and blue lights slicing through the growing dark. Inside, every second stretched, long, brittle, breaking. The true enemy wasn't fear. It was the clock, and it had just started ticking. The plan changed in an instant. No grand announcements, no sirens blaring through the terminal, just a silent cascade of movements, sharp, purposeful. Zephyr motioned to Captain Crowthorne. We disembark now. Quiet, fast, minimal exposure. Ace flanked him, head low, muscles coiled, eyes darting across the growing chaos beyond the windows. Outside, rain hammered the tarmac. Emergency crews moved with coordinated urgency, creating a shield between the aircraft and the world beyond. Inside, Zephyr and his team ushered James Collins forward. The accountant looked smaller somehow, shrinking into himself, as if trying to disappear into the fabric of the plane. Zephyr laid a hand on Collins' shoulder. Steady, grounding. You're not alone, he said quietly. Not today. Ace brushed against Collins' leg in passing, an accidental gesture, but somehow, it broke the man's frozen posture. They moved down the narrow jet bridge, each step heavier than the last. The storm outside raged harder, shaking the frame of the walkway, wind howling like some ancient warning. Halfway across, Collins stumbled. Not from fear, from something else. A sharp sting of realization hit Zephyr. Collins wasn't just frightened. He was marked. Ace snapped his head up, nostrils flaring, scenting something that didn't belong. Zephyr's hand went instinctively to his weapon. Then he saw it. A tiny red dot dancing along Collins' chest. Laser sight, hidden somewhere in the storm beyond. A sniper waited. This evacuation wasn't their escape. It was their execution. Unless they moved, now. Zephyr didn't think. He moved. One arm yanked Collins sideways. The other swept up, shield raised, weapon drawn. Ace, cover! The German shepherd reacted instantly, pivoting to block the exposed angle with his own body, muscles locked, growl vibrating low and deadly. Time fractured. A single heartbeat stretched into forever. The red dot skittered. From Collins' chest to Zephyr's shoulder. The sniper had adjusted. There was no more doubt, no more guesses. The next breath could be his last. Zephyr didn't flinch, didn't blink. If someone has to take it, let it be me. He took another step, keeping himself between Collins and the unseen barrel aimed from somewhere in the storm. Passengers behind the glass watched, frozen, faces pale, hands pressed helplessly against the windows. But no shot came. Not yet. The sniper was waiting for a cleaner kill, a stiller target, a mistake. Zephyr's mind raced, calculating angles, distance, escape routes. None good. Ace let out a sharp bark, slicing through the tension. Distract. Without thinking, Zephyr dropped a flash grenade from his vest. Clink, clatter, roll. Then, white explosion. The jet bridge lit up like the sun. Blinding, disorienting. Zephyr shoved Collins forward, Ace surging ahead like a dark bolt of lightning, clearing their path with terrifying efficiency. Shots cracked through the whiteout. Wild, panicked. None struck home. They burst into the waiting arms of tactical units outside. Bodies shielded, breaths ragged. Zephyr didn't look back. There was no time for victory, only for survival. The world outside the jet bridge was a chaotic symphony. Shouts, radio static, flashing lights slicing through the misty rain. But inside Zephyr's mind, only stillness. Every muscle ached with leftover adrenaline. Every heartbeat sounded too loud in his ears. Ace remained glued to his side, chest heaving, eyes scanning every shadow. Tactical teams swarmed around them, sweeping the area. Paramedics rushed to check Collins, who clutched his side but nodded weakly. Alive. Barely. Captain Crowthorne approached, face drawn and pale. "You did it," he rasped. Zephyr shook his head, a grim smile flickering and dying in the same breath. "No," he said quietly. "We only bought time." Because even now, beneath the rush of survival, he could feel it. This wasn't the end. It was a pause, a breath held too long. Zephyr knelt beside Ace, running a hand down the German shepherd's damp fur, grounding both of them. "You were perfect," he murmured, voice cracking. Ace pressed closer, a silent anchor in a world unraveling. Then a buzz at his earpiece. "Vexen, urgent. We pulled surveillance from Alderwyn. 2 men matching the description of the cockpit intruder were seen, but only one boarded your flight." Zephyr's stomach dropped. Meaning? Meaning one's still loose, and Valoran Bay is still the target. The realization slammed into him like a fist. Everything they survived, every bullet dodged, had been a decoy. The real storm was still coming. Zephyr rose, eyes narrowing into the distance. Ace stood too, ready, unshaken, and somewhere beyond the storm-soaked horizon, the enemy waited, smiling. Orders snapped through Zephyr's earpiece. Coordinates, clearance codes, fragmentary intel. None of it mattered. All he needed was Ace. They moved together across the rain-slicked tarmac, a silhouette of man and dog against a fractured world of flashing lights and looming shadows. Ahead, Valoran Bay's outer perimeter stretched, half-shrouded in mist. Perfect for an ambush. Perfect for someone who knew they were coming. Ace's paws splashed through shallow puddles, silent but sure. His nose twitched, his body a taut line of focus. Zephyr trusted it more than any satellite feed. They skirted the edges of abandoned hangars, every sense burning. And then, a shift. Ace froze. One paw lifted. A scent. A presence. Zephyr knelt instinctively, narrowing his gaze across the swirling mist. A shadow moved, not fleeing, waiting. A trap. Zephyr's grip tightened around his weapon. "We don't run from storms, Ace." The German shepherd rumbled low in his chest, hackles lifting. Another figure flickered through the mist, faster this time, slipping between cover like a ghost. Not random movement, calculated, leading them, or baiting them. It didn't matter. Zephyr rose, motion smooth, silent. Ace pressed against his leg, ready. They advanced, not reckless, relentless. Because whatever lay ahead was no longer hunting them. They were hunting it. They moved like a single thought, Man and dog cutting through the mist. Ace stiffened, ears pricking forward, breath shallow. Zephyr followed his gaze. At the edge of the broken fence line, a figure emerged. Slow, deliberate, no mask, no rush. A man with ice in his veins, stepping into the open like he owned the storm. Zephyr raised his weapon, voice steady. "Federal agent, hands where I can see them." The figure smiled. Cold, slow, wrong. He lifted his hands, palms up, empty. For a second, it almost felt over. Ace didn't relax. Neither did Zephyr, because something was wrong. Too easy, too still. Then Zephyr's breath caught, a glint hidden under the man's left sleeve. Metal, a trigger, not a gun, a dead man's switch. Detonator. A low primal growl vibrated from Ace's chest, deep enough to make the mist seem to shudder. The man spoke, voice casual, almost gentle. "You were never the target, Officer Vexen. You were the message." A cold fist tightened around Zephyr's heart. This wasn't about Collins, wasn't about witnesses. It was about fear, about spectacle, about bringing chaos into the places people believed were safe. The man's thumb shifted, just slightly. Ace lunged. Zephyr fired. The shot cracked the mist in half, but it was already too late. The mist swallowed everything, and somewhere beyond the gunfire and echoes, a second plan had already begun. The shot echoed into the mist. Then silence. For a heartbeat, Zephyr thought maybe, just maybe, they had stopped it. Ace circled tightly at his side, tense, every fiber screaming not yet. Smoke drifted low across the ground. A smell, sharp, acrid, rose in the air. Something burning. Zephyr's boots splashed through shallow puddles as he closed the distance. The man lay crumpled, blood seeping into the cracked concrete. But his hand still clutched the trigger, still pressed against a secondary device hidden beneath his jacket. A remote, not a dead man's switch. A signal, and it had already been sent. Zephyr's heart slammed into his ribs. He tore the jacket aside, revealing a transmitter blinking a steady, ruthless red. Active. Oh, God. Ace whined low, pressing into Zephyr's leg, reading the sudden shift in his scent, his breathing. It wasn't just about Valoran Bay. This was bigger, broader, coordinated. All the false leads, the frantic movements, the planted evidence. They hadn't been failures of planning. They had been designed to scatter resources, to stretch defenses thin, a distraction. And now, somewhere across the city, maybe in the crowded terminals, maybe at the children's hospital adjacent to the airport grounds, maybe both. Something was about to happen, something worse than anything they'd faced so far. Zephyr clenched his fists, forcing his body to move when every instinct wanted to scream. Ace was already turning, nose to the ground, muscles taut. The hunt wasn't over. It had just begun. Zephyr didn't wait for orders. He sprinted, mud and rain splashing up with every desperate step. Ace surged ahead, nose to the ground, body a black and tan blur of instinct and drive. The airport perimeter blurred past, security lights spinning, voices barking over radios, vehicles converging too slow, too late. We're running out of time. Every instinct screamed the same direction, toward the far side of the grounds, toward the hospital. Zephyr clicked his comms. "Possible second device near Valoran Children's Center. Evacuate immediately. Repeat, immediate evacuation." Static, chaos. A half-heard confirmation, not fast enough. Ace veered sharply left, almost pulling Zephyr off his feet. Zephyr followed without hesitation. Around the maintenance depot, past a shattered fence line, and there, tucked against a loading dock, half buried under a maintenance crate. A duffel bag, worn, innocent, forgettable. Except for the faint, unnatural hum in the air around it, the hum of something that should not exist. Ace growled, not barking, not whining, a low, vibrating warning that sent chills straight into Zephyr's bones. No time for bomb squads, no time for protocols. Zephyr scanned the bag, catching the faint glimpse of a timer blinking under the canvas flap. 90 seconds, maybe less. And suddenly, The distance to the hospital felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Too close. Zephyr knelt beside Ace, hand on the dog's steady, strong frame. This wasn't a choice. It was a debt, a promise. They would not let this place become another scar on the world's map. Not today. Not if they could stop it. 90 seconds. Zephyr's brain raced, calculating, rejecting, recalculating. No safe perimeter. No time for bomb disposal. Too many civilians. Too close. The weight of it slammed into his chest. He had to move the bomb. Now Ace barked sharply, pulling him back from paralysis. Not fear. Focus. Zephyr's fingers closed around the frayed strap of the duffel bag. The metal beneath the canvas was warm, humming with energy and finality. He looked at Ace, his partner, his shield, his shadow. Go, he whispered, voice breaking against the storm. Ace didn't move. Instead, the dog shifted closer, shoulder pressing against Zephyr's thigh. A silent refusal. We started together. We finished together. Tears burned the back of Zephyr's throat, hotter than the rain. He hooked the bag onto his shoulder with one brutal motion. Muscles screaming, heart hammering. Ace flanked him instantly, matching his steps. They ran, pounding across the tarmac, cutting through the skeletal remains of the service road, the far field, the old storm drainage pit, the only place isolated enough. 60 seconds, maybe less. Each footfall felt heavier, each breath a stolen thing. Zephyr didn't think about what came after, didn't allow himself the luxury of fear. Only this moment, only this promise. No innocent would pay tonight, not while he still had breath in his body, not while Ace still stood beside him. The drainage pit loomed ahead, a hollowed scar in the earth, forgotten by time and city planners. Zephyr didn't slow. He vaulted down the embankment, mud sliding beneath his boots, Ace a heartbeat behind him, every muscle straining, every breath a blade slicing cold air. The timer was down to seconds now. He could almost hear it ticking, inside his skull, behind his ribs. He skidded to a halt in the center of the pit, wrenching the duffel from his back, throwing it down with a grunt of finality. Ace whirled around him, scanning, guarding, never leaving his flank. Zephyr ripped his radio free. This is Vexen. Device located and isolated. Impact imminent. Clear perimeter. Static answered, garbled, distant. No time to wait for confirmation. Zephyr turned to Ace, his partner, his brother, his shadow in this endless storm. Stay, he choked out. Ace didn't move. Zephyr's heart broke cleanly, quietly. I mean it, boy. Stay. Ace let out a soft whine. Not fear, not disobedience. Grief, the kind only those who truly understood loyalty could give. Zephyr forced himself to back away, step by step, eyes never leaving Ace. 30 feet, 40. He ran, dragging his soul behind him, as the drainage pit fell away into the mist. Behind him, Ace stood still, unmoving, guarding the danger and guarding Zephyr's future. The blast didn't come, not yet, but the silence that followed was somehow louder than any explosion. The pit faded behind him, a ghost swallowed by mist and fear. Zephyr stumbled, lungs tearing at the heavy air. He reached the ridge, turned, and everything inside him shattered. Ace was still there, unmoving, silent, guarding, protecting. The seconds stretched, elastic and cruel. Why hasn't it detonated? He fumbled for his comms, voice cracking. Bomb unit, we need immediate interception. Manual override. Static, only static. And then, movement. Ace shifted, just slightly, head lifting toward the sky, as if listening to something beyond human hearing, as if sensing change. And then Zephyr saw it, a second device hidden beneath the crate, wired separately. It hadn't armed with the timer. It was remote triggered. Someone was still out there, watching, waiting for Zephyr to run, waiting for Ace to be left behind. The ultimate punishment for loyalty. Zephyr's blood turned to ice. Without thinking, without breathing, he sprinted back. Ace barked once, sharp, warning. But Zephyr didn't stop. Not this time. Because if Ace was ready to give everything, Then Zephyr would match him, step for step, heartbeat for heartbeat, through the mist, through the rain, through the screaming of common sense. He reached the pit's edge, skidding in the mud, arms outstretched. And Ace launched toward him in one explosive leap. For a second, just a second, they were suspended together in midair, man and dog, trust and fury, refusal and love. The world held its breath. And then, the world exploded behind them, a roar of fire and broken sky. Zephyr hit the ground hard, rolling through mud and rain, shielding Ace with his body. The shock wave chased them, grabbing, tearing. But somehow they stayed whole. When the world stilled, when the echoes finally faded into ragged breathing and hissing rain, Zephyr opened his eyes. Ace lay sprawled against him, shaking, alive. Zephyr buried his face into the dog's soaked fur, not to hide tears but to let them fall freely. They had made it, together. Sirens grew louder in the distance. Figures ran toward them, security teams, medics, hands reaching to pull them to safety. But in that moment, Zephyr didn't see chaos. He saw only Ace, the loyalty, the love, the silent promise that had defied everything, even death. Some heroes wear badges, some wear harnesses, some just walk beside you, step for step, when the world turns to fire, and never let go. If this story touched your heart even a little, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Share what this bond between Zephyr and Ace made you feel. If you believe in loyalty that stands even in the darkest storms, consider joining our community by subscribing. No pressure, just a quiet invitation to walk this path of incredible stories with us. From all of us, and from Ace, thank you for being here. Woof. Life lessons from this story. Sometimes the bravest acts aren't the loud ones. They're the quiet steps taken when fear should have stopped you, the silent choices made when no one is watching. Zephyr and Ace taught us that true loyalty isn't about grand gestures. It's about staying when everything tells you to run. In a world that often feels chaotic, uncertain, we all need someone who would stand their ground for us. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. And maybe the strongest bond isn't built in moments of victory, but in the storms we survive together. So if you're lucky enough to find that kind of loyalty, in a friend, in family, in a faithful companion, hold it close. Protect it fiercely, because sometimes it's not about saving the world. Sometimes it's about saving just one soul, and in doing so, saving your own. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts below. Your voice matters more than you know. And if you believe in stories that heal and connect us, we warmly invite you to join our community. No pressure, just presence. Woof.